Mr. Speaker, likely your last time with us before Saturday's vote. So up front, let me go ahead and say I've really enjoyed our talks, and I want to thank you for your desire to serve. Thanks for that.
Well, thank you, and I'm very excited and very grateful to the people of South Carolina for the positive way that they have responded to my candidacy and to what we're trying to do. So I just want to thank everybody who's listening, because they've been so wonderful to Callista and to me and to my daughters.
Let me ask you this. Several big stories obviously hitting the news today, some that seek to help you, some that seek to hurt you. And I want to give you a chance to respond to them before we talk some issues. Let's get them out of the way. First, the ex-wife thing. I'm more about Newt Gingrich wanting to go forward versus looking backward. But take a moment, address the past, address the claims, get it over with. Well,
it's very sad. People sometimes get very bitter. They sometimes hold grudges. Things happen. The allegations, as I understand them, I haven't seen the interview, but the allegations that have been in the press are just plain untrue, and it's sad. And both of my daughters have stood up and written a letter to ABC News protesting it. 4 or 5 of our closest friends who were there and who knew the circumstances are all willing to be witnesses to protest it. But, it makes me feel very sad, and I don't want to say anything negative about Mary Ann. I'll just say that this is a sad thing to go through and utterly unnecessary in a presidential campaign.
Let's get to the positive side. You received the endorsement from Governor Rick Perry today as he dropped out of the race. What was your reaction when you got that call?
Well, Rick and I talked just before he spoke, and he is such a class act, such a nice guy, and just the way he framed it, he put it in the context of Texas history. He and Anita are wonderful people, and I like both of them very much. And I was very grateful to get his endorsement. I thought his description of the mission was exactly right, that as a citizen we have missions, whether we're in office or not in office. We have duties as citizens. He is going to continue to be active as a citizen. I have no doubt about that. And I really look forward to his help. He's agreed to head up a 10th Amendment implementation project that is going to be very important in getting power out of Washington back home to the states. And I really look forward to working with him. It was really one of the high points of the campaign, the conversation that he and I had.
Talking with Newt Gingrich, Mr. Speaker, as I did with your rival, Governor Romney, yesterday when he was on with me, let me clear the air on a couple of our listener concerns, kind of put them to rest so we can get to a few issues. Clarify the money thing from Fannie and Freddie. I know you said you were a consultant. Tell me, how much did you get? What did you do for them?
Well, first of all, the contract was with a company, and the company had offices in 3 different cities and had overhead. My share of it was about $35,000 a year, and we gave them strategic advice for that. We sat down with them and we talked through exactly what they were trying to accomplish. I have a big passion for helping poor Americans have a chance to own a house. I used to work with Habitat for Humanity on housing projects, and so we tried to help them work through the ways that would be practical, that would work. Second, we talked to them about government-sponsored enterprises, which have a long history, rural electric co-ops, for example, federal credit unions, and a number of different organizations. The only time that I ever talked to the Congress about them was recorded in the New York Times in July of 2008 when I told the House Republicans to vote no. I said, don't give them any more money. So it's the opposite of what some of the allegations have been. I never lobbied for them, and I did not try to help them get any special advantages. I actually ultimately concluded that they ought to be broken up. They're too big, and they're just too badly managed. Both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are. And so my actual policy position is to break both of them up into 5 or 6 companies and gradually wean them from federal subsidy.
The super PACs have been talking about fines and this and that. What was the situation with the ethics, the $300,000?
Sure.
Explain that.
Look, when we defeated the Democrats for the first time in 40 years, they were furious at me personally because they knew I was the engineer of the success. They filed 84 different charges. 83 were totally thrown out. 1 we ended up arguing over, and frankly, on the substance parts, over the following 2 or 3 years, the federal judge, the Federal Election Commission, and the Internal Revenue Service, all 3 said that the House was wrong, and we won all 3 on substance. But in the process, we had a lawyer who wrote a letter that was inaccurate. I signed it. I shouldn't have. I was busy doing stuff as Speaker. We were negotiating balanced budgets. So I took responsibility. I said, look, this was clearly a mistake. It shouldn't have happened. And I offered to, I didn't get fined. And in fact, it specifically was not a fine. I instead said, I will pay the cost of the investigation because this was my mistake and it shouldn't have happened. And that's what the $300,000 was.
If you had to do this one thing over again, I don't know if you would do it or not. Would you have not sat with Pelosi on that bench and done that commercial?
I knew you were going to go there because I've said it myself. I've said, dumbest single thing I've done in the last 10 years.
All right, you don't even have to go. You have no farther on that. That's all I wanted to hear you say. Let me get to some things that really matter now, the important issues of today. You spend a lot of time here in our state. You know, with us, most places, but certainly here in South Carolina, we've been dealing with double-digit unemployment for a while. It's jobs, it's jobs, it's jobs. But one thing that in all the visits you've been with me, I haven't asked you about, what about all the money that's on the sidelines, all the people who want to spend money or hire people or build houses, but you can't get anybody in D.C. to tell us what's coming with the Bush tax cuts, what's going to happen with Obamacare.
Well,
What do you do?
That's a major weakness that we have because this president is so incapable of working with the system. The Congress and the president just seem to be in a logjam. They can't get anything done. And it's really pathetic. So I believe that the first three things I will ask the Congress to do in January of next year when they're sworn in on January 3rd is to stay in session and to repeal Obamacare is item one, repeal the Dodd-Frank bill is item two, which is a bill which is killing small banks, killing small business, and weakening the housing market, and item three would be to repeal Sarbanes-Oxley. That would start us in the right direction. I also would ask them to freeze taxes where they are so no taxes would go up. And then I have a very bold, very aggressive tax plan to create jobs and to rebuild manufacturing. When you talk about rebuilding manufacturing, creating jobs, you just described a big problem in South Carolina. We don't have a lot of people here, or we do have a lot of people here, and a lot of them are not that highly skilled when it comes to things. They worked in factories and textiles. How do those people ever get back to work? Well, a couple of things. First of all, I have a tax plan designed to create a whole new generation of factories and give us the best equipment in the world. Second, I would change unemployment compensation so in the future it had tied to it a program of worker training so that you actually ended up, if you're going to get unemployment compensation, you get new training while you're getting the compensation. So we would never again pay people to do nothing. And I think you would rapidly see a dramatic turnaround in the skill of our workforce. I would also develop offshore energy. You have at least $29 billion in natural gas offshore, and I would take part of the money from that. By the way, those jobs are about $80,000 a year jobs. And then I would take part of the money from that, and I would put it to modernizing the Charleston port so that when the Panama Canal is widened in 2014, you could accept the bigger ships and remain competitive in the world market. And one of my goals as president is to come back to Charleston and see the first container ship leave Charleston with South Carolina manufactured goods to be sold in Walmart in China with Made in America on them. I like that idea. A gallon of gasoline is twice now what it was when President Obama took over. I don't see Republicans reminding Americans about it. And then there's Keystone yesterday, which makes it worse. Well, I don't either, and I just think that's because Republicans don't communicate very well. An American energy plan is a key part of my program. I've been talking at every single stop yesterday and today about the Keystone Pipeline decision. It is an utterly irrational decision. I don't see, and frankly, the Environmental Protection Agency under Obama wants to add another 25 cents a gallon to the cost of gasoline. So, I mean, you really have to wonder where their heads are at. They don't understand what normal Americans go through. They don't understand the price of living. And Obama's going to have a hard time running this fall with gasoline twice as expensive and maybe even higher by this fall than it was when he came into office. A couple of things that are real specific to our state. President Obama bailed out Harry Reid. It was pure political on the Yucca Mountain thing, and that's fine. I get the way the game is played, but my state is in it for $1.2 billion. You've been here enough. You know I don't think South Carolina has that to just throw away. So how do we get our money back? I think that was all done as an energy surcharge. I think we should seriously consider giving it back as an electricity rebate so that everybody would have very low-cost electricity for 3 or 4 years. There is zero reason for the federal government to keep your money if they're not going to spend it. What about Eric Holder coming down here in the Justice Department saying South Carolina's wrong on voter ID? Well, one of the first things I would do on the opening day, as soon as I was sworn in, is I would issue instructions to the Attorney General to drop the lawsuit on voter identification, and I would issue instructions to drop the lawsuit on illegal immigration in Arizona, Alabama, and South Carolina. I think it's absurd that the federal government fails to do its job, and then it sues the state because they're trying to do the job the federal government should have been doing.
A couple more things, and I'll let you go, Mr. Speaker. Foreign policy. Will sanctions really slow down Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon?
Only if they're accompanied by covert operations and an all-out political mobilization of the Iranian people. We know how to do this. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and Pope John Paul II did it to the Soviet Empire, and they broke the most powerful, largest empire in the world. We could replace the dictatorship. There's no evidence that the Obama regime has any understanding of how to do it or any willingness to do it.
You just mentioned the Cold War with President Reagan, and we've talked about Middle East a lot when you've been visiting. We've even talked about China a lot. Do you have any concerns about Putin and Russia and it getting ugly again?
Not really. I mean, I have some modest concerns about the amount they invest in technology and in cyber warfare, and I think they could be suppliers that are dangerous to other countries. But I think that they have enough internal problems that they're not likely to be nearly as dangerous as they once were.
All right, I'll leave it with this. It's our last visit with you before they go to the polls in 48 hours here in South Carolina. What do you want the WVOC listeners to remember most about Newt Gingrich before they hit the polls?
Well, I think it's very simple. I'm a Georgia conservative. I worked with Ronald Reagan starting in 1974. I have a clear commitment to conservatism. I am the only candidate who's in a position to stop Romney. A Massachusetts moderate is going to have a very, very hard time defeating Obama. And I think if we want to defeat Obama, we need a good debater who's a firm conservative who can draw the line and can stand toe-to-toe with Obama and explain conservatism in a successful way. And I hope everybody, a vote for anybody but Newt Gingrich is in effect a vote to make Mitt Romney a moderate, the Republican nominee. And I think that would be a big mistake, both in terms of winning the election and in terms of trying to govern.
Wish you the best and safe travels to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the time. Take care. Newt Gingrich joining us.